The Earth is a beautiful place because it has one ability that no other planet has: the ability to sustain life. Humans, animals, and even anything with living cells at all have the ability to grow because of living conditions in our atmosphere that are ideal to us. It's all about being a part of a community, an ecosystem, nature, and balance. However, our planet, the Earth, our home, is being attacked by negative impacts of climate change. And if we don't do anything now, then we're going to lose a home to defend it. It is my hope by the end of my speech that I've been able to open up your eyes to the damage of climate change on our world and how we as a community can reduce our carbon footprint and attack climate change. Now, we can easily break this speech down to who are the main contributors of climate change, what is the status of our climate change in our Earth now, and how we as an individual, even as an individual or a community, to attack climate change. Now, to talk about climate change, we need to know what climate change is. And climate change, defined by Google, is a change in global or regional climate patterns. Basically, just abnormal changes that are not natural for weathers. And these abnormalities are caused by greenhouse gases, or the emission of greenhouse gases, mainly CO2. And CO2 is a main contributor because a lot of us humans are emitting CO2, which is a gas that takes a really long time to dissipate and has the ability to absorb thermal energy and stay in our atmosphere. That's why some people would think it's a lot hotter, because our atmosphere is constantly taking in trapped heat. Now, based on the website titled EPA.gov and with the article written titled Impacts of Climate Change, they quote, "Many places have experienced change in rainfalls, resulting in more floods, droughts, or intense rain, as well as more frequent and severe heat waves." This source basically just says that climate change is very much real. You can see how there's going to be more frequent heat waves, there's going to be droughts, floods. It's just not in control anymore, and it's becoming more severe. And that's all because of CO2 that we as humans, ironically enough, have been creating and causing trapped air inside our atmosphere. One way we can counter is with trees. However, with recent deforestation happening all around happening yearly, we've been losing trees. And trees are supposed to be able to take in CO2 and produce O2 for us to breathe in. It's sort of like a cycle between us and the trees. However, with deforestation, we have been losing these sources, leaving excess CO2 in our atmosphere. And from the website titled theworldscount.com, it's basically just keeping track of how many trees are being cut every day. And a quote from them is, "In just 40 years, a forest area the size of Europe has gone. Half of the world's rainforest has been destroyed in a century. If we don't act and the current rates of deforestation continue, the world's rainforest will be gone in 100 years. If we keep this up, in 100 years, we're going to lose a main source of CO2 intake. With that in mind, we're going to only have CO2, and we're going to slowly lose our Earth." Now, with the contributors of CO2 in mind, what are the big companies? Well, us as humans, with the burning of fossil fuels, transportation, electricity, anything that is man-made has been emitting CO2. And so we need to take responsibility as human beings who are emitting these CO2 to help solve a problem and save our planet. Now, the negative effects of climate change has affected our world how? What is the status? Well, it has led to soil pollution, light pollution, and overall, again, the weather abnormalities. On the topic of soil pollution, there's an article titled "Soil Pollution and Its Effect on the Future" by Iberdrola, which is a company that specializes in soil and agriculture. It says, "Among the most common causes of soil contamination caused by human activity, the FAQ highlights industry, mining, military activities, and work, etc." It's basically just a list of how soil contamination has occurred, and that is because of us humans again. And so that's not really good for agriculture when we need food in the future and developing plants. So yeah, that's not very ideal for us. As for light pollution, it's basically when unnecessary light is being emitted, and so our sky is being blurred up because of thermal energy being emitted and CO2 being emitted from these artificial lights. These artificial lights I can think of are the street lights that we see at night, so we can see at night. but they release thermal energies that are being intaked by the CO2 in the air already, and as well as emitting its own CO2. So it's all around bad for us. Okay. Now, with this whole pollution, there's an IPCC 2021 report, and the IPCC is just basically a yearly assessment of how climate change is affecting our world. And it quote, the report projects that in the decades, climate change will increase in all regions. For 1.5 Celsius degrees of global warming, there will be increasing heat waves, longer warm seasons, and shorter cold seasons. And this again just goes back to that we are still in a situation where the heat around us is still increasing. And it just goes to show that this is still an ongoing problem. And if we don't fix it, it's only going to get hotter from here. Now, we know what climate change has been doing to our planet now. How can we as a community, or even as an individual, fight climate change? Well, there's an engineering solution from the BBC.com titled The Device That Reverses CO2 Emissions. And I think this is a great idea because we've known that CO2 or greenhouse gases in general are the reason why climate change is such a big deal. We need to remove the CO2 to remove climate change because of the entrapped heat. And so they developed this device called the DAC device. It's titled Direct Air Capture. And so it's just a fan that sucks in the CO2 or any air particles, and there's a chemical process that breaks down the CO2 to make it more pure and entraps it in its own system. Once entrapped, there's two purposes. It can be used for greenhouses that develop plants for trees, for anything that can grow that needs CO2 to grow. Or we can use CO2 to push out any reserved oils in the ground for uses, which I don't think is very ideal, but I think more for the plants to grow, I think that's a great idea. And as an individual, we need to call for action by government leaders. We need to call for action. We need to be a part of political ideas. We need to urge policies to help defend our planet. Another thing we can do is reforestation, which is basically planting more trees. We need to start looking globally. We need to do it as a unit, start planting trees for the CO2 to take in and emit O2. And I'm speaking as a community and as a unit. As an individual, you can start investing in more renewable energies, grow your own food, which would be cheaper, or you can even carpool to reduce gas emission, to reduce that carbon footprint. As an individual, you can do these. All right. Well, by the end of my speech, I hope you have learned something new about climate change, know the danger it has occurred to us, and what we need to do to save our planet and to keep surviving on our own. Thank you.